Welcome to our book club on Paul and Stephen. In this book club, we shall find therapeutic features, some that will not only cover the history of the book, the story behind it, but mostly give you exercises so you can, you alone or with your group, meditate on personal things, and with that, find some therapeutic tools to live and lead a better life, inspired in this book that is actually the bestseller of all Spiritist books, Paul and Stephen. This book was written in 1941 through the hands of the Brazilian Spiritist medium Francisco Cândido Xavier, the Spirit author Emmanuel. And Emmanuel himself, now in our first session, talks in the preface of the reasons why he compiled such masterpiece. Why hundreds of pages dedicated to the history of a man that we already know, of his history that is said in the Bible? Well, first and foremost, let's talk about the historical and religious background of the times. If we take a look at the map of the time, we'll see that this is pretty much the area that Saul of Tarsus, or Paul, covered in his trips after he converted to Christianity. From old Achaia, here Greece, from Corinth to Asia Minor, to places such as Damascus, Jerusalem, Joppa, Tarsus, where he was born. This is the scenario of the era that covered Christianity in its primitive states. At the time, we had the Roman Empire ruling throughout a huge area of Europe and Asia Minor. Not only that, but in religious terms, we had a most conflicting time where the Roman pagans didn't care much about what was told at the time in regard to one God only. And on the other hand, we had the different sects of Judaism, amongst them the Pharisee, and Saul of Tarsus was one of them as well. So, when we talk about it, what do you know about Saul of Tarsus? This is our first question. Have you heard about Paul? Have you heard about Saint Paul? They're all the same. This is actually the main character of our story. Well, but you may be asking, why Stephen? Who is Stephen? But before we go there, let's talk about one of the questions that really pertains to the very beginning of this book. In its subtitle, we have Paul and Stephen, History of Primitive Christianity. Why has Emmanuel, the Spirit author, decided to subtitle it in this way? Well, why do we need another book to talk about the story that we already know? So let us see some of his own explanations. He says, "It's our highest and most sincere desire to call to mind the harsh struggles and bitter testimonies of an extraordinary soul who rose above human struggles in an incessant effort to follow the steps of the Master. Today's lukewarm churches and believers, misguided desires in various sectors of Christianity justify our intentions." First question we ask here for all of us studying this: are we one of them? Are we one of the people who are following these Christ consciousness teachings and are not aware how much our lives could actually be changed if we were really following its teachings? Are we already capable of forgiving those who hurt us? Or are we open to really honor our father and mother as it was preached by Jesus? Well, not only that, but Emmanuel reminds us of the importance of not giving ourselves to this spiritual idleness and displays of least effort. He says nowadays many disciples compete for the privileges of this condition, while others intentionally avoid honorable work by praying for supernatural watch care from heaven. Churches and devotees give themselves joyfully to accommodating situations, preferring materialistic rules and pleasures. How many people actually say they are Christians, and they actually separate themselves from those who do not understand these teachings yet? Would Jesus do this? Most likely not. Certainly not. So here's the calling of Emmanuel, so we can reflect on the life of the man, the people at the time of primitive Christianity, who really followed the steps of the Master and changed not only their lives, but the lives of all of us. In that sense, we come to another question in this very preface. What is then the relevance and importance of Stephen in Paul's mission? Why is it important to mention Stephen, and who is Stephen? Well, actually, Stephen is the first martyr of Christianity. He was the one who died at Paul's hand when he was sold. Well, and Emmanuel explains to us in this very part of the book of the need of contribution of Stephen and other personages of this true story to confirm the necessity and universality of the law of working together. So it's teamwork, the true Christ consciousness. Like Jesus himself, Emmanuel reminds us, he needed the company of 12 helpers to really come true the message that he brought to us. So are we really following Jesus' teachings in working together as a team? Or are we still being led by our ego in an egotistic fashion, thinking that we need to be one of the spiritual leaders who solely are on stage and cannot really share it with anybody else? So here we are, being called to our own mission. And what is it? Emmanuel very interestingly brings to us in one of the last parts of his preface, the calling of all callings. He says, well, Saul himself is this unforgettable weaver and tent maker. He indeed had his own divine ministry. But who in this world does not have a ministry from God? How about you? How about us? Do we recognize our ministry from God? What is it? And he says, many will say that they do not know what their particular calling is, that they are ignorant in that respect. However, we will answer that besides ignorance, there is neglect and much pernicious caprice. Those who are more exacting will remark that Paul received a direct call from God, but in reality, all ordinary men and women have been personally called to serve Christ. The form may vary, but the essence of the summons is always the same. The call to the ministry sometimes arrives shortly, unexpectedly. Most people, however, are resistant to the Lord's generous invitation. So here's our first exercise. Let us meditate on this very question. Who in this world does not have a ministry from God? Write it down, chat with your friends, meditate on this as we prepare the next session for chapters 1 and 2.